Hey everyone, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We are almost at the end of an incredible month that we've dedicated to this theme, all about data, because we know for autonomous systems, it's always about the data. And we thank Carosoft, our month sponsor. Today we have with us, coming to us live from Singapore and the Singapore Air Show, and by the way, it's midnight there. This is Manoel Coelho. He is the CEO of Speedbird Aero. So great to have you, Manuel.
Thank you, Don. It's great to be here. Thank you, everyone.
So I guarantee everybody, we are going to have some choppy connections. Just bear with us. This is what happens when you're a jet setter and come in live from all over the world like Manuel. But, Manuel is no stranger to this show. In fact, he was on in January of 2023, our very first show ever with AVSI, with Yoav Amitai from L-Site. So we'll drop that link if you missed that show. Go back and watch it. It was a classic. I think for us, it broke like all records in the number of views. So well worth watching. But Manuel, we've got you back. So thank you again. And what I want to do is make sure that folks that aren't familiar with you know a little bit about your background. So can you give us that maybe 30-second elevator pitch of, what your background is?
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm an international business person, right? I work with disruptive industries. Literally, I did for the first 13 years of my career telemedicine for aviation. So we provided telemedicine medical services for aircraft all over the world, and then moved on to telemedicine real equipment, where I met my partner and co-founder Samuel Salomo. He was an engineer, working with me in solving the telemedicine problems, which is making software control hardware at a distance. And our office was at the Scottsdale Airport in Phoenix, right, in the Phoenix metro area. So we learned about drones from there since 2011. We've been, fascinated by the world of drones and how to use drones to actually bridge the gaps, the healthcare deserts where people could not get access to vaccines, medications, exams. So that's how we started, and that's our background. We started Speedbird to bridge that gap and use drones where the telemedicine advice would reach, right? The exams medicine was hard to do it. So we needed the physical aspect. And we equate that to the new world of virtual orders, right? People ordering online, but they still need to get something physical at home. So that's where we're very excited about having a drone delivery company, a drone logistics company to get things to you when you need the most.
And you set up shop in Brazil, but you're clearly a global company. I remember when we spoke last year, and I wrote an article about this. Opened up a presence in the United States as well. Clearly, you're in Singapore now because you have some clients there. You work with Skyports on ship to shore deliveries. You're in the UK. We're going to talk about all this. But before we do, Manuel, I know we have a really cool video that gives a great overview of what Speedbird is doing. So let's go ahead and roll that video, and I'm going to have you talk over it and explain what we're seeing here.
Well, absolutely. This is our operations with one of the biggest labs in Brazil, taking medication. This is in Brasilia, in the capital of the country. And then we moved to, very, very interesting. Right? Anybody probably should know is Copper Flow, very traditional area with the Second World War. Beautiful, beautiful countryside. I definitely recommend touristic, trips there. But the Royal Mail, for people that live there, this is a reality, right? The weather is challenging, and sometimes the ships that take the mail from one part of the islands to others, would be delayed because of windy conditions and the sea conditions. So this was, a very ingenious work from the Royal Mail and Skyports, and we're very proud and honored that they chose Speedbird's aircraft systems to do that. So that's what we do. on a daily basis in Orkney. And from there, we moved with Skyports to something that's the first in the world, right? This is the first time a water company and putting out drones, we actually implemented a system for analyzing the quality of water real time from a drone. This is not to collect the water and take it for a lab. This is actually doing the analysis real time from the drone's connectivity to the location. This is in Israel, first actually departure from an airport in Eilat, in the south of Israel. This is a daily delivery for the last 3 years with iFood. We deliver McDonald's and a few other major shops. This is the delivery now in a countryside in Brazil, in a big city for labs over the seas, right? So we have about a 40-kilometer BVLOS area in the city of Salvador. And it finishes up with Rio de Janeiro, one of the most beautiful cities that we have in the Brazilian, territory, where you can see the partnership with a beverage company, AB InBev, right? So taking beer and other beverages to people from the distribution center, cutting down the time that the people are supposed to receive their beverages. Obviously, this is the beginning, right? With
Yeah, I think Ambev is Anheuser-Busch in the United States. And so super cool. I know that's one of the largest beverage companies in Brazil. So super amazing that you're doing all this. Oh my gosh. So, when I was talking to Manuel before the show, and by the way, everybody, this is live. So just remember to jump in the chat, tell us, where you're from, ask Manuel questions. But getting back to, when I was talking to Manuel about this year and what he had going on, and we were looking at the dawn of autonomy and what was a good fit, Manuel picked all about data month because of everything they do. All of these use cases relies on data, including UTM. So what I want to do, there's so much we're going to talk about, Manuel, and I want to get right to the heart of this UAS traffic management that you're also doing. People know you for drone delivery. They may not have known, and I think they may have even known about the mail delivery in Orkney. They probably didn't know about the water, real-time water sampling that is, frankly, a first ever. But UAS traffic management and Speedbird Aero are not terms that people, at least hopefully before the show, but hopefully after the show, they will associate them together. Tell me about UAS traffic management and what you're doing in that space.
Well, that's a great question. We've been working in Israel since 3 years ago with Highlander, one of the best, if not the best, in my opinion, UTM, unmanned traffic management system to people. The project is very advanced. We had a chance to work with other great companies, but Highlander is very advanced in Israel in doing what they're doing, in other parts of the world as well. They're a global company and, made us realize the importance of the UTM, including that video where we are taking off from Ramon Airport in the south of Israel, going to the Lot, a 17-kilometer BVLOS flight that we did in a border town. We were 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers away from Jordan, and the aircraft is flying 17 kilometers BVLOS from an active runway. So that was actually possible because of our integration and our command and control software connected to the UTM and being able to coordinate the airspace so we can fly it safely and steer away from any danger.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that are not familiar with Highlander,
Yes.
about 2 years ago, I was part of the Edge 2022 event, which is co-located with CES. And from the stage in Las Vegas, I flew a drone in Israel using L-Site's command and control, but Highlander's UTM system. And that was wild. I'm on the stage in Las Vegas, Nevada, commanding and controlling a drone that was flying in Israel. So Manuel, you're working with Highlander. Are you using then this UTM system and the data uh, from Brazil, for example, to fly in, I don't know, pick a location? Or are you, for example, in Singapore right now with Skyports and that ship to shore delivery system you're putting together? Do you have some kind of command center or group there that is riding on that UTM backbone?
It's a great question. When in Brazil, we are the manufacturer and the operator. So we do have our own UTM solution that we are integrating with the Brazilian government, gradually developing here. We have a few other big partners like Embraer, Artec, which is the Brazilian arm of Embraer that writes the ATM codes, right, for the Brazilian government. So we are heavily involved in becoming a service provider for UTM with the support of Highlander, with support of other companies that we are actually collaborating around the world. Here in Singapore, Skyports is the operator. They use our systems, but our systems are connected to another UTM here locally in Singapore. Not only that, our systems are also connected to marine traffic because we do actually go to the ships, right, automatically. So you click the ship, it finds a route, it knows the airspace as well because you have a UTM connection. So it steers away from both, dangers, understanding where the ships are so you can go to them and do the work or collecting, taking cargo, but also ensuring that the airspace is protected and we are working safely.
Wow. So what that tells me right there is you've put together an entire ecosystem that's really plug and play and can be integrated almost anywhere. So I want to shift for a second from UTM and kind of software applications. We can get back to that, Manuel, if you want to, highlight more things there. But I want to talk about the hardware because throughout the video we saw in the beginning of the show, it was highlighting the drones that you're creating, and you've had a lot of first evers with those drones, with ANAC, which is the Civil Aviation Authority in Brazil. And most recently, your DLV-4, which I think is your eVTOL. I believe we have, there she is. Tell us about what's going on with your hardware and this latest certification, which is really big.
Yet is the first commercial operations that we are allowed to do. Brazil has a slightly different system that they developed, which is quite advanced, that allows us to actually work, with companies and providing, but we share the data real time with the regulators. They come to inspect the aircraft, the flights, etc. And then we migrate towards a few months of real flights and then until we reach the type certification. It's still under 25 kilograms maximum takeoff weight, so the requirements are not as stringent as, for example, another class of aircraft, but still a very big thing, big accomplishment to ensure that the aircraft are flying safely under the same systems that we use at Speedbird. So our operators also that used to fly multi-rotors, now they're flying eVTOLs safely and using the same connectivity, the same partnerships that we have around the world, as I just mentioned, in UTMs and developing our own systems as well to operate in Brazil. And outside, we very much look forward to supporting the operations of our partners, and that's why shows like this is very important because we can actually talk to people directly, answer questions. I see a few questions coming here as well, which is great. And as you mentioned, the hardware is key, and we use that data on daily flights, sharing the data from our systems here with the Civil Aviation Authority. I don't think anyone, or maybe some authorities do that, but we're able to actually share our dashboard with the regulatory entities here so they can actually track it and see how Speedbird is doing and how safe of operation. So they can even follow the flights, not on the command and control, but they can actually see where the aircraft are, what the aircraft are doing. You can see the hours of flying, and you can see any warnings that we receive from the aircraft or the operators, right? So they're able to actually map out and say, well, the connection timeout here, we had issues with this component or that component. So that type of transparency and honesty is very well
Yeah, you said the word transparency there, and I was going to actually mention that because I imagine that is why you've had such great success with ANAC and all these other civil aviation authorities. The fact that you're really an open book when it comes to your data as to what is exactly happening. Now, before we get to Marshall, we have a really good question from Marshall Hobbs about your water sampling, which we'll get to. I want to highlight that this the name DLV is for delivery, and you have the DLV 1 and 2, and those are quads, rotorcraft.
Exa rotors, multi-rotor, yeah.
Multi-rotor. Okay, yeah. So I know we talked about those and we had some images in the last show and we saw them in the video. But the DLV1 is the smaller one.
Correct. These are for home deliveries that will do the last mile. Most of the time, this is the best aircraft for that. One delivery of a meal, hamburger, etc. When we do grouping of meals, for example, for iFood, which is our biggest food delivery companies, we do multiple meals that go from the shopping mall to a strategic distribution areas around the city. So, Brazil, it's very common to have delivery personnel on bikes and electric scooters. So we are taking advantage of the vast resources of the country in terms of employment, right? So we makes it a lot cheaper to just do 80 to 90% of the route, so people do not risk their lives actually going through the major arteries of the city. But it goes from a shopping mall where the supply is right of cargo and food, clothing, etc., and it goes to these specific areas of the city where from there in the hubs these motorcycle deliveries or scooter deliveries are delivering to people's homes. And when we can, we actually get to a residence or a development area that has actually a common drone port that we can actually deliver the cargo there inside the gates, right, because of security.
Yeah. So, fun fact, everybody, I actually wrote an article for Inside Unmanned Systems magazine called Drone Delivery Takes Off in Latin America. Now, it features several companies, but Speedbird Aero was one of them. And Manuel, in researching that article, that was really the first time I got to fully appreciate the dangers of regular, traditional deliveries in Latin America, including Brazil, the motorcycles you're speaking of, and the death and accident rates that are through the roof. And also the infrastructure isn't awesome from the road standpoint. So to be able to fly over all that is really changing the game. And so we'll drop that link so people can read that article. We've got that, and I'd love for you guys to check that out as well. But solving a really, really big problem there. So tell us a little bit more about your cloud control station, right? So you're developing a UTM, you've got the hardware that we talked about, but all of this is backed up by, software. And as you said, in Brazil, you have a control station. Tell us more about that.
Well, this is all due to Samuel, my co-founder and great friend that we work together. He has done so well, for example, coming up with the software that is actually in the VA for telemedicine, Veterans Affairs. If you go to the VA today, the software that was there was actually developed by him, and then DoD and
Wow.
others. They use that, user experience, the encounter software. So he has a very long history of friendly user interface, right? Safety, obviously, cybersecurity, ensure that you have no more than what you should have in there, right?
Yeah.
But we also learned a lot from operating ourselves, drinking our own Kool-Aid, as we say it, right?
Yeah.
But also listening to our customers, listening to people that are operating outside, and each area has different requirements. For example, in Israel today, we're flying because we have been able to implement certain things that, for example, when GPS jamming happens, which happens unfortunately now more often than before
Yeah.
due to the conflict, right? The drone doesn't fly away, right? So we have Samuel has to develop inside the rules of our software image recognition. The drone can fly itself back, right, safely, because obviously the routes are pre-planned. It's a little
Yes.
bit different than dynamic routing where the operator, the pilot can fly randomly. We teach the routes to the drone, and the drone through AI will recognize it, right? This house is what this location is, and then it can fly without the GPS slowly, right? We're still developing the technology farther and farther, but the truth is today the drone will not run the risk of flying away. Coupled with that, Samuel just installed with the team an anti-jamming, device in
Wow.
Israel with our drone, so we can actually protect it. So it's all about how much you control of our technology. We
Yeah. So, well, it sounds like the norm for deliveries, whatever you're delivering, is that folks plan and define some specific air corridors. There's predefined routes, and then they're all strategically connected with drone ports, which, by the way, the United States is just figuring out what does a drone port even mean. And there's a FAA request for information out there. Everybody had posted that on LinkedIn. But tell us more about these drone ports.
Here in Brazil, the Civil Aviation Authority has mandated 8x8 for us, right? To keep safe, distances where we have to have some protection in there, and we can operate pretty much from anywhere, everywhere, at night as well. We have the permission to fly at night. The drone ports just ensure that no kids, people, animals are approaching it, so you can have a secure, operations without any risk to others, right? So we want to ensure that this is done as we gain more and more data. So we talk about
Yep,
data, right? And then we can eliminate certain, for example, the size of the drone port. 8x8 meters is a lot. It's not,
that is big. Yeah. So wait a minute. Are there like charging stations? Like what is it's not just like a big circle with a landing X in the middle. I mean, this is relatively significant piece of infrastructure that might be
Yeah, we
modular.
can depending on the aircraft, we can fit 2 or 3 landing pads, right? The drone port is just the area
Yeah.
or where you can actually land, and then the drone pads are, we have an Aruco marker that the drone reads it. One of the things is GPS, the global positioning systems in the southern hemisphere is not as precise as the northern hemisphere. So
Mm-hmm.
we have, depending on the time of the day, a few differences, right? In reading the geopositioning. So you can see a meter this way, 30, centimeters here. So the Aruco marker can actually ensure that when the drone gets in the vicinity, even though if it's off by a meter, 2 meters, etc.,
Yeah.
it can actually, oh, let's adjust automatically, and then every time lands exactly where the marker is supposed to be. So that's what we call a drone pad. So we have the drone port, which is the area, and then the drone pad.
Okay, so wow, there is a lot going on there. Now, tell you have a lot of partnerships, Manuel. We talked about your hardware, we talked about software, we talked about UTM, we talked about these drone ports and your ops center. But you've got a lot of partners to make this all happen. We mentioned a couple already, but you guys recently signed a memorandum of agreement